Since Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar dust in 1969, we've sent rovers to Mars and telescopes to the absolute edge of the universe. Yet the physical human footprint hasn't moved an inch further out into the solar system. Artemis targets a permanent, sustainable human presence in deep space, a massive shift toward building long-term infrastructure rather than temporary visits. You can't just build a new rocket and assume it will comfortably sustain a crew for weeks on end. You need a highly controlled stress test to measure exactly how these brand new life support and navigation systems handle the harsh deep space environment with actual human bodies inside. That task falls to the 4 astronauts of Artemis II. Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, and mission specialists Christina and Jeremy Hansen bring decades of high-stakes experience, from flying Navy fighter jets and breaking deep-sea diving records to commanding the SpaceX Dragon. Before anyone sets foot inside a future lunar habitat, this specific crew has to act as the proving ground. Artemis II is the rigorous, physical proof of concept required before we trust our lives to long-term deep space habitation. Lifting 4 people completely out of Earth's gravity well requires an absurd amount of upward force. The Space Launch System achieves this largely through 2 solid rocket motors strapped to its sides, each producing a massive 3.6 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. This is one of the 4 RS-25 engines that power the central core stage. Instead of building these from scratch, NASA pulled these exact engines directly from retired space shuttles. It proves the old shuttle playbook remains the mechanical backbone of American heavy lift. Sitting right at the top of the rocket stack is a highly sensitive launch abort system. It's essentially a tall spike outfitted with 4 small rocket motors designed to ignite instantly and pull the crew capsule to safety if the main rocket veers off trajectory. If those abort motors fire, the capsule could land far out in the open ocean. To ensure rescue teams aren't searching dark waters, Artemis II is scheduled for a night launch in Florida, precisely timing any potential emergency splashdown for daylight hours off the coast of Africa. When you strap human beings to millions of pounds of cryogenic fuel, the entire schedule revolves around their survival in the worst possible scenario. The darkness of a Florida launch window is dictated entirely by the math of an emergency ocean rescue. This diagram illustrates the initial flight path, an extreme elliptical orbit. The capsule will swing incredibly close to the Earth at just 185 kilometers above the surface, before shooting out to a massive high point of 70,000 kilometers. This is the Orion capsule, which its crew has named Integrity. Compared to the tight quarters of the Apollo era, Integrity boasts 60% more internal volume, allowing it to house a crew of 4 and new hardware like a modern integrated waste management system. While coasting in that massive orbit, the crew will conduct a 24-hour systems checkout. Pilot Victor Glover will take manual control and perform a simulated docking sequence using an ejected piece of the SLS rocket as a visual target to verify the capsule's maneuvering thrusters. This top-down view shows a capsule's exterior propulsion modules, which are notoriously difficult to perfect in a vacuum. Testing these maneuvering thrusters early is a response to the inherent volatility of new designs. Even modern systems can suffer critical propulsion failures, making this manual checkout the only way to verify the spacecraft is truly lunar-ready. If Integrity's thrusters or life support systems show the slightest irregularity during the simulated docking, the crew will use the low point of their orbit to abort the mission and land. A perfect systems check is the absolute requirement for heading to the moon. Once cleared, the engines ignite for the translunar injection burn, breaking the capsule out of Earth's grip. Instead of burning fuel to enter lunar orbit, they use a free return trajectory, letting the moon's gravity slingshot it back toward Earth. Using orbital mechanics as a natural return mechanism is a highly efficient physics-based insurance policy. It's the exact same trajectory that saved the Apollo 13 crew when they lost engine power and the bulk of their oxygen supply. Beyond mechanical failure, the crew faces the biological threat of deep space radiation. If the sun releases a burst of radioactive plasma in a solar flare, the astronauts will pull up the floorboards and pack bags of dense, rehydrated food around themselves to create a makeshift radiation shelter. By locking the spacecraft into a path governed strictly by gravity, the crew is freed from piloting the vehicle. They can dedicate the 4-day transit entirely to monitoring these biological hazards and testing the life support gear they rely on to stay alive. This diagram reveals a major difference in scale. While Apollo missions hugged the moon in a tight 100-kilometer orbit, Artemis II will sweep by at a massive distance of 10,000 kilometers, capturing a far wider visual perspective. Because of that incredible distance, as the capsule arcs around the far side of the moon, the astronauts will witness an enormous expanse of the lunar surface passing below them, just before the Earth itself crests over the horizon. The 1968 Earthrise photo provided a perspective that didn't exist before, showing the entire world as a small, isolated marble in the void. It offered a rare view of our planet's absolute solitude in space. Before that moment, our only views of space came from the blurry telemetry of mechanical probes. Now, the Artemis crew is bringing modern high-definition Nikon sensors and iPhones, ready to capture that same horizon with a level of crisp detail we've never seen. We are upgrading our view of the lunar environment from grainy transmissions to a sharp, vivid record captured directly through the lens of human experience. After a 4-day coast home, the crew faces the highest-stakes maneuver of the journey. The capsule separates from its service module and impacts the Earth's atmosphere at a blistering 40,000 kilometers per hour. The friction of that speed generates temperatures topping 2,760 degrees Celsius across the heat shield. That is a vastly more violent and intense thermal environment than anything experienced by a capsule returning from the International Space Station. Assuming the heat shield holds, the capsule will deploy its parachutes and splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, where an awaiting fleet from the Navy and NASA will recover the crew. Artemis II acts as the technical bridge between the limited Apollo era and a future of permanent expansion. It provides the final verification that humans can safely navigate, survive, and return from deep space.